Pledge allegiance
to the flag of
of
the
the
United
of the United States of America,
America,
to the republic for which it
which,
stands,
for which it stands,
one nation,
nation,
Indivisible,
God,
with
indivisible,
liberty and justice for all.
and justice for all.
Okay, I would like to entertain a motion to approve the agenda as submitted.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. I would like to entertain a motion to approve a resolution authorizing participation in the Missouri Capital Asset Treasure Program, MOCAT, and the intergovernmental cooperation agreement relating to the Missouri Capital Asset Advantage Treasury as presented.
So moved.
Second.
All right, I would like to throw this over to Dr. Hoven.
Thank you. Good morning, everybody. First, I just want to say thank you for coming together for this meeting. Unfortunately, we had a document that we had not received at the last regular meeting that would have been part of this as a normal agenda item. In addition, it was not a document we were expecting, and so we weren't even aware to be looking for it. So there was a communication issue that we didn't receive it. And so with a meeting coming up soon, we needed to call an emergency meeting. This couldn't wait until the next regular meeting. So this really would have been part of normal business as opposed to some sort of emergency situation. So with that, I'll turn it over to Mr. Supple to talk more about it, but I just want to thank everybody for coming together to get this final
Yeah, Laura. Hi, Mike.
discussed.
Thanks.
Hi, Mike.
Kevin, you're still muted.
You'd think that after all the Zoom meetings, I'd be better at this. Thank you again. I would echo what Dr. Hoven said. Thank you for joining the meeting this morning. So the Francis Howell School District has always used an investment cooperative for the bond issue proceeds. And I think there are two main reasons for that. We certainly have the opportunity to do those investments ourselves, the way that we manage the investment of tax revenues each year. The thing that's a little bit different with bond issue proceeds is that there are some additional rules attached, and that involves being able to demonstrate that you haven't used the bond issue proceeds in an unfair way to just generate money. So the federal government doesn't want you to issue bonds and then just hold on to the money and just earn interest. They really want you to use the bonds for the purposes for which they were issued, which is to construct and repair facilities within the school district. And so there's a special calculation called arbitrage, which takes a look at what you've earned on the bonds and what the cost of interest cost is on the bonds. And there's a calculation that needs to be completed. And these investment firms will do those calculations for us as part of their investment program. So we don't have that same consideration with the investment of the tax revenue that we generate each year. There's no arbitrage prohibition on those funds, but that does exist for bond issue funds, which is why we have used in the past the Missouri Schools Investment Program. This time we are suggesting that we join a new cooperative that's being formed in the state of Missouri, the Missouri Capital Asset Advantage Treasury. The reasons for our recommendation are that we have, while MOSIP has been good in terms of providing us with the arbitrage calculation, some of the other reporting that we use on an annual basis for audit purposes has not been as detailed as we would like. And we had an opportunity to see the reporting package that's available through MOCAT. It's much more complete, provides us a lot more detailed information. And we were able to find that the opportunity, the fee structure and the yields that we might get, we felt that there was an opportunity to increase our investment proceeds by moving to MOCAT. So I do want to take a moment to walk through on kind of a point-by-point basis an email that members of the board received to help you better understand why we're coming to you this morning, and to address some of the concerns or questions raised in that email. So the first has to do with concern about the emergency nature of this board meeting. Dr. Hoven has explained, and we provided to the board in the announcement of the request for the meeting, a copy of an email from the attorneys for MOCAT explaining that there was a issue with the email address. They typed my email address as Kevin-Supple, not Kevin.Supple. And as a result, the email never reached me, so I didn't know that I was to be looking for this additional set of resolutions, and was only contacted on Monday of this week asking where the resolutions were. And that began a chain of events. I initially was told that we could bring that to the October 15th meeting, and that was initially my plan. But the attorneys, in a conference call on Tuesday with all of the founding members of the MOCAT, indicated that because the other boards of education had approved their resolutions, including Francis Howell as one of the named founding partners, if Francis Howell didn't approve the same resolution, then it wouldn't be possible to move forward with the formation of the investment pool, because the other boards would have approved a resolution and there wouldn't have been a resolution approved by Francis Howell. And so we determined that because the meeting is scheduled for 11 a.m. today, if there was an opportunity to meet with the Francis Howell Board of Education and to receive approval, that would be the best way for us to proceed with the formation of MOCAT, which will allow us to take advantages of all the investment opportunities inherent with joining that investment pool. There was the next question or statement really had to deal with questions about caution and prudence. And I would say that while I apologize that the calling of a special meeting might give the appearance of haste, in fact, very careful consideration has been given to the decision to join this investment pool. I have had meetings with individuals from PMA over the course of several months, and have been in consultation with my colleagues and with the executive director of Education Plus. I'll note this in response to another question as well, but the education cooperatives across the state, like Education Plus here in the greater St. Louis area, have been championing PMA and the MOCAT fund. And so we have given careful consideration to the advantages of MOCAT over MOSIP or proceeding in some other fashion. We find ourselves in a very, very low interest rate environment. And so it's a careful balance between finding an opportunity to secure the highest yields that we can on investments, matching our required draw schedule but also keeping the fees as low as possible. And fees are, and again, we'll address this a little bit later, but fees are calculated as a percentage of the investment yield. And so in the initial indications, the fees that PMA and MOCAT would charge are lower than the fees that were advertised as being charged by MOSIP. So it does give us that advantage of helping to secure the highest yield possible on our investments by limiting the amount that's actually paid out in fees. Then the author of the email quotes a portion of the resolution and expresses a concern that the board is abrogating all of its oversight responsibilities. I have included and attached to board docs this morning a copy of Policy and Regulation 3160, which deals with the investment of district funds. And the authority for the investment of district funds by board policy has been vested with the chief operating officer. Now, I think that's appropriate. I think it falls clearly within the purview of this job. It does, I'm not sure that it would be appropriate that the board would become more intricately involved in the decision about the investment of funds as to whether we buy a treasury or a CD and what the yield is. I think those are all things that the board has hired me and the superintendent of schools to oversee, much as a lot of the other day-to-day decision-making of the school district has been vested in other people, and the board has some broad oversight in terms of policy. But through its policy has directed that the authority for investment of district funds rests with the chief operating officer. So I think you're operating within your policy to allow the COO and the superintendent to make recommendations about how district funds are invested. The next question has to deal with participation of other districts and that there are only 4, and that's true. This is a new investment pool within the state of Missouri, just hopefully being formed later this morning. But PMA, the company that's behind MOCAT, has been providing these type of investment services to school districts across the country for many, many years. So while it's a new entity within the state of Missouri, it certainly is not a new entity in terms of working exclusively with school districts in the investment of their bond proceeds to support them in their work. In terms of what other districts are contributing, Excelsior Springs is one of the founding members. They have $31 million invested through MOCAT. I don't have the specific amounts from the other 2 districts that are investing, but we can provide that information. I believe that I did invite this morning representatives from PMA and from Armstrong Teasdale to join this Zoom call, and they may be able to provide that specific information. But I certainly want to put out there very clearly, there's no question that Francis Howell's $107 million is going to be the most significant portion of this fund at its outset. In the past, the question about we've carefully managed or successfully managed the proceeds of bond issues, what has changed? We have always used a pooled investment program for our bond funds. So going back to the conversation earlier on about the arbitrage requirement and the calculation that's involved in that, that's a very, very specific and technical portion of tax law. So the ability to have those calculations done for us as part of the overall bond investment program is distinctly an advantage. And as I said, the school district has previously used MOSIP as a pooled investment cooperative. And so this time, because we have not previously been happy with the reporting capabilities through MOSIP, we were looking at what other opportunities were out there. As I noted previously, the education cooperatives from across the state, including Education Plus, are looking to introduce MOCAT to more districts. So yes, we are a founding member of MOCAT along with the 3 other districts, but I don't have any doubt that other districts will join MOCAT as they learn about the benefits that are available to them. The next question has to deal with expenses associated with the fund on top of what we would have spent by hiring a normal investment advisor firm. We really have never hired an investment advisor firm in any capacity, either for the investment of our tax revenues on an annual basis or the investment of any bond issue proceeds that we have. We have, again, as I've indicated previously, relied on an investment cooperative like MOCAT for the investment of our bond issue proceeds. The fees of the firm are all calculated as a percentage of the yield on investments. And so there is a standard rate, about 25 basis points that would typically be charged. But because the interest rate environment right now is so low, there's a much lower rate that's being charged. And that is dependent somewhat upon the the yields of the actual investments that are being made. But in a moment here, I will hopefully be through the email, my response to the emailed questions, and then I'd like to invite the PMA representative to provide some additional information about fees. What will the expenses be? So again, we just discussed that. The broker for the fund seems to be the PMA Network of Financial Services, and indicates that at the August 20th meeting, there didn't seem to be any competitive or alternative bid process. There's no requirement in statute that investment services be bid. What are the terms of the agreement and the services agreed to and the compensation to be paid to PMA? And why are those not attached to the meeting minutes? The compensation, again, is based on the funds invested through MOCAT, and the process for determining the fees is really a percentage of the yield on the investments that are actually made. And as I've indicated a little earlier in this discussion, the indicative fees that we've been shown so far have been lower than those that were advertised through MOSIP. So again, we are able to, as a result of pooling the funds, maybe generate a little bit more yield and keep our fees low, allowing us to maintain as much of the interest earnings as possible. The final question really has to deal with investment policy. So as I said, I have included a copy of the district's policy and regulation 3160, which is investment of district funds. So that has been added to this item. And I would just take, I think all of the previous questions are coming from a very positive place, and I'm happy to have been able to answer those for you and whoever else might be participating in the meeting today. But I will take exception to the statement that a lot of money is being thrown around. There's no money being thrown around. We have carefully evaluated our options for investing the bond proceeds, understanding the fiduciary responsibility that we have to the citizens of Francis Howell to guarantee the safety and security of those investments, and to earn as much interest as possible. And that statement, I don't have the policy. I'm relegated to this single screen. I've already got it split between looking at the board and looking at my notes here. So I don't have the investment policy in front of me, but our investment policy specifically gives direction that within the constraints of securing the principal of the investments, that it is the obligation of the chief operating officer to earn the highest yield possible on the funds that are available for investment. So I think that is what I have done, is to carry out the charge in board policy to secure the safety of the investments, but also to earn the highest yield possible. And then just a brief discussion about our investment policy. Our policy is modeled after the investment policy promulgated by the state treasurer. There are specific restrictions in Missouri, as I'm sure there are in all other states, of how school district funds can be invested. And really, they deal with the principles of safety and then yield. So always the safety of the investment first, and then yield is secondary to that. So our policy has been modeled after the policy promulgated by the state treasurer, and we follow that, and MOCAT is obligated to match or follow our investment policy. So all of the investments that are being made are going to be in accordance with our investment policy, which again matches that has been determined to be the prudent manner of investing funds by the treasurer of the state of Missouri. So I am going to ask now that if Michelle Weiberg is available. There may be, I see Michelle, thank you. Michelle, if you could unmute and just address the question about fees and maybe even the additional, what other funds outside of Excelsior Springs are being invested. So I don't know the amounts that the other two school districts are bringing to this investment pool. Ladies and gentlemen, This is Michelle Weiberg. She is a principal with PMA Investments and has been working with me closely over several months on the MOCAT program. So Michelle, thank you for joining us.
Good morning. Kevin, can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am, we can.
Okay, great. I apologize for jumping in here late. I just saw the email at 8:15 as I was driving into the office, so I quickly pulled over and here we are. So good morning, everyone. So having joined late, I'm not sure if I'm hearing all of the background of what has been discussed thus far. So I'll just address what Kevin has asked me to address. First of all, from a fee standpoint, MOCAT will be established very similar to MOSIP, the other fund that is already in operation in Missouri, with a fee structure that will come off of the yield of the liquid pool of assets. So our fee, as well as the fee for custodian, for legal counsel, all of that will come off of the yield of the eventual pool, and the net yield would be then delivered to the participants. MOCAT will have a liquid pool of assets, as well as PMA would work with districts to look for fixed term investments. So those would be, as Kevin mentioned, in accordance with state statute, guidance from the state treasurer, and your investment policy. Fixed term investments, including certificates of deposit, U.S. government treasuries and agencies, and whatever kind of works with your funding needs to take a look at making sure you have, as Kevin mentioned, safety, liquidity, and then yield. In working in Missouri, as we are about to launch the new fund, MOCAT, which should be hopefully up and running around early to mid-November. But prior to that, saw that obviously with the huge success of referenda in Missouri with your June election that was supposed to be in April, and by the way, congratulations on your tremendous success there. But we saw an opportunity to deliver a service that is really core to what PMA does, and that is bond proceeds management and investing. And so we kind of, in partnership with the professional organizations we're working with in Missouri, set out to kind of inform potential participants of that service available. And we're fortunate enough to start working with several districts already, including Francis Howell. There are 3 other districts that we are working with: Excelsior Springs, Harrisonville, and Belton. In total, we are managing, I think, about $170 million of Missouri school funds at PMA in advance of MOCAT launching. So once MOCAT launches, I think we will obviously have more participants. In the interim, we wanted to address the immediate need of finding a home for bond proceeds for those successful referenda. So, we certainly feel very optimistic and excited about the opportunity in Missouri and what we think we can bring to this market. And I think MOCAT will, hopefully as we approach your tax collection season in December, January, that we'll even, be able to get out there and gather operating funds as well as the bond proceeds that we've already accumulated. So I think we're off to a great start. And in terms of what we've done already for Francis Howell, we have found opportunities with Missouri banks as well as looking at U.S. government treasuries and agencies to get yield for the district that is certainly in excess of what is currently available in MOSIP, at least in their liquid pool. So we've been thrilled with what we've accomplished so far in what is an incredibly challenging market. As a board, you probably are thrilled with the rate you got on your bond issue. But on the flip side of that, there's very little investment return, and banks aren't really clamoring for funds. So it's a challenging market, but we're excited about what we've accomplished so far in terms of placing investments for Francis Howell, and then moving forward, look forward to the bond reporting and the service aspect of managing the funds over the life of your projects.
Michelle, could you tell us how much money PMA manages across the country?
We are close to $30 billion right now across the country. MOCAT will be our 14th fund that we work with. So although we are new kids on the block in Missouri, this is a core area of our business, is managing these local government investment pools in various states. I will add one more thing about fee and what we've accomplished thus far for Francis Howell. We've done, because rates are so low, we're finding investments that are yielding 12 basis points or 11 basis points. We have worked for, I think on any given investments, we haven't worked for more than 2 basis points. So we've kept our fees very, very low in an effort to make sure we're creating, some meaningful return for the district.
Thank you, Michelle. I appreciate that. I've had a longer than expected presentation this morning. So again, this was advertised to the board as maybe being a little bit shorter than it has taken, but this is a great opportunity for board members to ask any questions they might have. Also joining us this morning is Matt Kitsey. He is an attorney with Armstrong Teasdale. Armstrong Teasdale is the legal counsel for MOCAT and has been working with PMA on the formation of MOCAT. So if there are some specific things around the formation or things that an attorney might best be able to answer, Matt is also here to support any questions, answer any questions the board may have.
I appreciate the in-depth answers to those questions. Thank you, Kevin. Any questions, board?
Yeah, I have a question. What are the risks that we as a district would face in joining a new fund? What are the risks associated with that, switching from what we have done as a common practice into this new program? Just wanted to kind of get that out there, since that may have been brought into question by that email that we got.
Sure. The risk is no different than the risk that the district assumes with any of its other investments, which is almost non-existent, because all of our investments are in accordance with the state treasurer's policy. And so when you think about a certificate of deposit or a treasury note, while you can't say that the risk is zero, I believe that everyone would think that investing in a treasury of the government of the United States of America is pretty much a zero risk. So the principal is almost certainly guaranteed. And because of the way that our investment policy is designed, the risk, the inherent risk, is no different. There aren't any, MOCAT is no more able to invest in, make a riskier investment than MOSIP would be able to make, because they are all governed by our investment policy.
I have a question. Mr. Supple, with being a founding member, does that put us at an advantage over some of the other districts that would be joining later? And could you address that part of it for us?
I think the advantage is more as a bragging rights than some. You know, we aren't going to earn more on our investments because we're a founding member, but as I am very excited about MOCAT and believe that it will be a great opportunity for school districts in the state of Missouri. And people may look in the future and say, oh, I am so glad MOCAT is here. And Francis Howell was a significant founding member of that organization. So I think that would be the advantage, but MOCAT would certainly treat all of the districts equally in terms of the investment. So I don't think we received any favoritism in terms of our investment or the yields on them. And there's, I will say there is this advantage. As a fund hoping to establish a more significant footprint in the state of Missouri, MOCAT is going to be working twice as hard as a firm that might be already established, because they have to differentiate themselves in the marketplace. So I don't know that that's an advantage for Francis Howell singularly, but for the founding members and for the other districts that join, I think it is an advantage to be working with a firm that is so anxious to expand their business presence and will make every effort to see that their clients are attended to in the best possible way and securing the best possible investments that yield the greatest amount of funds to support the work of the school districts.
Thank you.
Kevin, if
Yes,
we're
sir.
not happy with the service and or investments that are presented, how long are we obligated to this company or this group?
We'd be obligated only for the term of whatever investment instrument is out there. And to the extent that some of those are extremely liquid, I think we would be able to. So if you think about a treasury is extremely liquid. So although its maturity date might be at some point in the future, they're traded on a daily basis, and so they're very liquid. And so if we become unhappy to the extent that we determine that it's the relationship is not working, we're limited only by the term of the investment, most of which are extremely liquid. So essentially, we don't have any long-term commitment to the organization. Now, there may be a certificate of deposit that has a maturity date, But again, that's our investment. And so the management of that could be shifted to another firm if that was determined to be in the district's best interest. Again, it's our investment.
Thank you.
Any other questions, board? No? Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? All right, motion carries.
Board members, thank you very much. I appreciate your taking the time this morning to meet with us in order to accomplish this so that I can share with the group at our 11 a.m. meeting this morning that the Francis Howell Board has approved the various resolutions. And I know that I speak for Michelle and all of PMA when I tell you that we will do our very best to prove to you that this was a prudent decision on the board's part to make sure that we were managing the funds that have been entrusted to us in a way that provides the greatest benefit possible for the students and the community of Francis Howell. So thank you very much. I appreciate your confidence in myself, in PMA, and in the decision to move forward with MOCAT.
I appreciate it. Okay, I'd like to entertain a motion to adjourn the meeting.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, everybody. Appreciate it.